And we are welcoming David back into our congregation, but of course, we all have that gap, which is Phyllis, David's wife, who died last week, and we're very sad that Phyllis is not with us today. It sits heavy with us as we see David here. And I just want everyone to know that the memorial service for Phyllis is going to be not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday, the 19th of November, at 11 o'clock here in the chapel. So lovely to have you with us, but I just want to mark Phyllis not being here with us. So thank you. So we are in the middle of a series that I'm doing at the moment on the subject of the art of navigating life. And if you want to see previous episodes of that, if you look at the little red slip in front of you, you'll be able to find out how to get the podcasts of that. And if you want to be in our mailing list, the little blue slip that's in front of you as well. So the art of navigating life. And last week, we talked all about the art side of that, how we make our life a work of art as we navigate our way through life. And during that conversation, I used a particular quote from Paul Tillich. And Paul Tillich said, "The decisive element in the predicament of Western man in our period of time is the loss of the dimension of depth." The loss of the dimension of depth. And Ian McGilchrist, I quoted him last week, saying, what is deep has abundance, fertility, much packed within, like a great poem or a piece of music. Though what that is cannot fully be known. It reaches not just beyond our viewpoint, but beyond that which we can grasp. To believe that everything is within our grasp is surely a failure of imagination, he says. One that he contends leads in turn to a failure to apprehend the deeper meaningfulness of existence. He says the question of the nature of depth, like that of the nature of truth, has a particular urgency for us now. Is there, in fact, anything left in the world that we would be prepared to describe as not just clever or innovative, but deep? So we sort of touched on the subject of depth last week. And then during the question and conversation, Heather said, what is depth? So that's why this week I wanted to talk a little bit about that today. You know, how do we recognize depth as opposed to shallowness? And last week I mentioned, Heather said to me, what is depth? And the word profound came to me, and I looked up the etymology of the word profound, and it comes from pro, which means before, and fundus, which means the bottom. So profound means before the bottom. And it suggests going to the depth of something rather than staying at the surface. So we're looking at that area, and then Tom Paxton, who was here last week, said that the very definition of depth was unity of consciousness. That experience or idea that we all live within a deeply interrelated consciousness that stretches right out into space and in the same way stretches inward into the interior of our consciousness, giving the notion of unity of consciousness incredible depth in all directions because it is bottomless. In the Bible, the Apostle Paul describes the love of God in the same way in Romans. He says, "For I am convinced that neither death nor life, nor angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God." going there to the very depth between life and depth, angels and demons, present and future, any powers, height and depth. And in that little Bible passage, I think that is a description of the betweenness of things. The betweenness of things. And I think if we're looking at depth, that's a good place to start. Seeing depth as being in some way the betweenness of things. It would be shallow just to look at the very top or the very bottom. But the depth comes when we look at all that's in between. So depth, I think, is in some way relational. It's concerned with the how of things relating rather than a description of the thing itself. It is a description of the how of things relating rather than a description of the thing itself. And so as we look at what characterizes depth, we begin to look at the interrelation of factors rather than just observing the what is of things. You know, if you go back to that sailing analogy that I used last week, not just looking at the surface of the sea, but also looking at the weather and the currents and the movements of the tides and looking at what the sea might be doing next. I've been looking at the Battle of Trafalgar recently, it's the anniversary, and Nelson was a huge expert in the movement of the seas. And coming up to the Battle of Trafalgar, he told all his admirals, he said, look, there's going to be, it was flat, it was calm. He said, there's going to be a storm coming up after the battle. So after the battle's happened, make sure you anchor all the ships. And of course, you know, the admirals thought he was mad because it was flat storm. He died in the Battle of Trafalgar, and then the admirals didn't anchor the ships, and there was a massive storm came up, and 2,000 people died in the storm. And that's an example of someone who is looking at the depth of a situation, not just what is right in front of him. He understood the way the waves move, the way the wind moves. And as we're looking at life, as we're looking at depth, we have to have that same awareness. A depth of knowledge is something that implies the interrelation, be that of electronics or physics or human behavior or weather or music. It's a three-dimensional picture rather than a one-dimensional picture. So much of politics is one-dimensional. This happens because of this. Therefore, this is good and this is bad. That's how it's presented to us. When in reality, it's much more complicated. We prefer the simple because it means we don't have to think. And it's the same in religion too. Jesus loves you because it says so in the Bible. Let's just stay with that because it means we have to, you don't have to, we've got the answer right in front of us. We don't have to look any further. 1, 2, 3, therefore 4, 5, 6. And I can sleep easy in my bed knowing that Jesus loves me because it says so in the Bible. To deal with depth is to open oneself up to complication. And so many of us want life to be simple so that we can just get on with it without having to think too much. We like to be entertained on the surface level. It pleases us. We can watch and laugh or cry. We don't have to get involved. We can just respond from what triggers us rather than actually getting involved. The ultimate in shallowness is to live on the level of our willingness to be triggered as a way of getting us from one moment to the next. We just are triggered by whatever, from one moment to the next. It's like being a ball in a pinball machine. We get thrown from one place to the other. Lights go off, noises happen, we get bashed about, there is excitement. People love that. It's what social media is about. It's what the culture wars are about. People being thrown from one fixed position to another with the illusion of movement. but with absolutely no depth whatsoever. And, we become addicted to it. We elect politicians who entertain us the best, who press our buttons most effectively. We give them the most attention because they give us the most stimulus. The same with scrolling in social media. A laugh here, a gasp, some purines there, and an OMG over there. Bang, crash, ding. And then we wonder why the pinball machine... I'm sorry about this analogy, but I just had it. We wonder why the pinball machine of our life ends with us going into the dark hole, only to be batted off on another journey by something else. It's all on the surface. Ian McGilchrist says, what is clear is that depth cannot easily be replaced by other more approachable concepts. When we call something deep, we don't mean that it is just beautiful, important, special, complex, or difficult to understand, though it may be any or all of those things. It is, in fact, the simultaneous sense of something that is charged with ultimate meaning, and yet, perhaps for that very reason, is hard to put into words. Charged with, Immigrant justice is something that is charged with ultimate meaning, and yet hard to put into words. Almost that we know it when we see it, but it's difficult to describe. So, how do we rediscover the dimension of depth? Well, I think the answer comes in the appreciation of value. The appreciation of values. I think this is key, and I'm going to give you another quote from Ian McGilchrist, who I'm reading his book at the moment, which is why I'm giving you these quotes. But I really think this is the key thing. He says, the customary way to think of values is to see them as piggybacking and arising out of our consciousness. Values are a human invention. That is the traditional way of seeing values. But an alternative view is that values are not invented, but discovered or disclosed. And it takes life to discover or disclose those values. That they declare themselves in and through the responses of living beings to the world and the world's responses to them. Value, writes Thomas Nagel, is not just an accidental side effect of life. Rather, there is life because life is a necessary condition of value. There is life because life is a necessary condition of value. Valuing depends on relationship, McGilchrist goes on to say. Only in its appreciation is value fulfilled. But it is not we who originate the possibility of truth or goodness or the beauty of the cosmos. We help fulfill those values or not. He says, I see value as an intrinsic of the universe, and the possibility of appreciating and responding to value, therefore fulfilling its potential. Fulfilling the potential of value is one reason for the cosmos having evolved life. Indeed, life could be seen as the very process, as cosmic consciousness continually both discovering and furthering its beauty, truth, and goodness, both contemplating and, not separately, but in some indivisible act, bringing them further into being. It's a process. And he says this is not surprising if awareness is foundational to the universe rather than arising from it late in the day. I think that's a fundamental thing, that awareness is foundational of the universe rather than arising late in the day when humans or whatever came about. The idea of unity of consciousness leads to the idea of the evolution of consciousness, the latent awareness. Evolution of consciousness is the latent awareness within all creation that it's evolving, and that we are the apex of that evolution of consciousness in our ability to self-reflect and be aware of the process that we're part of. That's the traditional idea of the evolution of consciousness, that we are aware of it, it is happening, there's a general awareness, and we are part of that. And because we can self-reflect on it, we then bring that evolution of consciousness further on. But McGilchrist is suggesting here that at its roots of the evolution is the evolution of the discovery of value. That we don't think that something is good because it conforms to our ideas of the morality of goodness, or beautiful because we are beholding it as so, or truthful because we recognize it as such. He's suggesting that values are the bedrock of evolution, and that truth, beauty, and goodness are the lifeblood of what is driving evolution, and that our recognition of them is not something that our brains have come up with. You know, here's a morality. Oh, this conforms to that. Oh, I think this person is beautiful. My brain likes it because I want to reproduce with this person, and therefore it is just utilitarian. It's not utilitarian, but it is a recognition of what is latent in all creation. We're just at that point of evolution where we can recognize these already existent values. And he goes to say, therefore, the evolution of consciousness depends not just on the recognition of the source from where we come, but from the discovery and adoption of these values that are embedded in the heart of all creation. When we uncover goodness and beauty and truth, we are mining the very precious metals that will drive the future of evolution. It's not just the precious metals that we mine to put in our smartphones that are the important metals. It is the goodness, the truth, and the beauty that we discover and appreciate as human consciousness evolves and the understanding of the nature of humanity evolves. That is what we discover, and that is what drives evolution. And I believe it is through this understanding of value that we can rediscover the nature of depth. It says in Philippians 4, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. This is the biblical instruction for depth. And when we look out at life, it is these things that we should be looking for in our rediscovery of depth. Does what we're involved with contain these things? Do our politicians exhibit these values? Are they there in that which we're giving attention to? Be that on our screens, in social media, or what we just pay attention to. And in the rediscovery of depth, what is key is the awareness of what we're giving attention to. As I said last week, attention is the most valuable commodity in the world today. It is what everybody pays for. It is what all the advertising budget goes on. It is what all the politicians want. They want attention. People want to buy your attention, and they give you stimulus in return. Is that okay with you? It's the price you pay. And literally, isn't that interesting? The word is, you pay attention. There's a payingness. There's a cost involved. Attention, from the Latin attendere, meaning to stretch towards. That's what attention means, to stretch towards. In the rediscovery of a depth, you have to become aware of what you are stretching towards And ask yourself whether or not you're investing in the depth of values that are inherent within life, or ending up like a beached whale in the shallows of mere existence. And so this talk of depth all comes down to our relationship with the very nature of life. Are we willing to examine that relationship and go as deep as necessary to hit the bedrock of value that is at the center of life, that which will take us on as humanity? Humanity will develop through mining that bedrock of goodness and truth and beauty. Or do we just scratch the surface and are content with living within a pinball machine where gravity takes us to the lowest common denominator? Depth is what is required for the evolution of our world. And without it, we'll just blow ourselves up in one way or another. And as it says in the Bible, let the reader understand. Okay, so we always have an opportunity just to discuss what we've been talking about or come up with anything. There's an opportunity to either share an experience, ask a question, disagree. Sometimes we just have a nice bit of silence. But is there anything anyone would like to say, any contribution anyone would like to make to what we're talking about? Yes, Mark. Just wait for the microphone because they won't hear you in Wisconsin.
Is it on?
Yes, it is, yes.
If I had 3 thumbs, it would be 3 thumbs up.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. Maybe evolution will give you those extra thumbs. Thank you. Anybody else like to say anything? Leslie.
That was great. And at the same time, I felt there was part of me that was like, my mind was going, I got to really pay attention here.
Yeah.
And that word depth, last week when you asked about it, I'm just going to say what came up for me, see if I'm on the right track.
That's totally fine.
But it really sort of felt like it came to me. And it just said, depth is bottomless. Depth is your real DNA. Depth has always been and always will be, as is true for you. And depth is a place to, if you're not there yet, try to visit. And I just feel like that's what I'm really interested in.
There's a bit of emotion there about something there. What's the...
You know, it's just such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And I think lately I've had a friend who passed, and I'm so grateful. So much has happened in the way of depth for me. I don't know how to explain it. It comes and goes. And it's been so beautiful. And then, you know, like all of a sudden I'm not there.
Yeah.
I'm just ordinary. And I'd like to stay there.
Yeah.
And I think that depth, I have a hard time with the word because for some reason it sounds like it does have a bottom.
Yeah.
But I love what you said, and as far as the politicians, I mean, I can't do anything about that. I can just find my depth.
Yeah.
And there's so much in depth. There's faith. And all these words, I think my brain has trouble with words because I want experience. It's like, are you having it? Find it. Don't just talk about it. You know, sit and feel faith. And you will make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is all about paying attention to what does have depth, and recognizing what has depth, and investing in that which has depth, and paying attention to what is shallow at the same time, and being aware of that. Yeah, Man Ray.
Well, I've been away for 5 weeks from this service, and I feel the depth in my return.
Thank you, Man Ray. I really appreciate that. Bruce, yes, thank you. And then we'll come to you. Thank you.
Here's an interesting case study. If you go to YouTube and search for Ode to Joy chorus from Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and you watch this 6-minute thing and think, wow, I mean, it's deep, let's unpack it. And so you Google around and you find people who say, okay, here's what's going on, and levels of the game and all sorts of stuff. And by sort of trying to dissect it, there's no magic, there's no spirit. You sort of, well, what must Beethoven have been putting into this personally, emotionally? What's his purpose, etc.? Or, musicians would say, oh, look what he's done here. He's done this. I like that. I'm going to put these together and use this as a sort of an impetus for sort of a next level of sort of depth, if you will. And so I like the quote from Ian McGilchrist, which says, if you don't really understand this stuff, it's a lack of imagination. And so, the folks that are curious, and go deep, continue to sort of go deep and share it around. It's great.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you. Yes.
I'm curious about the part of awareness and emotional and logical awareness and the capacities that we have for awareness of depth. And in part of what you were saying, it sounded like, I don't remember the name of that author, but they were saying that the universe also has this awareness of depth, and there's like a resonance in that acknowledgement, and that's why we are able to be in communion with that aspect. And I'm curious about how do we find that? What are practical things that we can do to stay open, or how does the universe reach out to us in that way? And how do we make, I don't know your name, but wanting to stay there. And I don't know if this is me asking for what are 10 steps I can do today? But that's just where I'm at.
I think it's a perfectly right question, and I can see you pregnant for an answer. So
what I would love to do is, how we usually end with final words? I want to bring these final words right now because I think they completely relate to this. So James Finley, a lot of you know who I mean by James Finley, one of our teachers here at the chapel. And he puts it like this. And this is really about how to cultivate a contemplative mind, how to access the depth dimension, really. So this is just an example. Without warning, we find ourselves falling into the abyss of a star-strewn sky, or find our heart impaled by a child's laughter, or the unexpected appearance of the beloved's face. Without warning, we lose our footing in the silence broken, and in the breaking, deepened by the splash of a frog we did not know was there. What is so extraordinary about such moments is that nothing beyond the ordinary is present. It is just a starlit sky, a child at play. It is just the primal stuff of life that has unexpectedly broken through the mesh of opinions and concerns that all too often hold us in their spell. It is just life in the immediacy of the present moment before thought begins. Here, in this unforeseen defenselessness, is granted the contemplative experience, however obscure it might be, that we are the cosmic dance of God, and that the present moment, just the way it is already in its deepest actuality the fullness of union with God we seek. These moments pass, and the real question then for us is, what happens next? All too often, unfortunately, nothing happens next. The gate to heaven opened, and your cell phone went off. You were already late to a meeting. Nothing happened next. But sometimes what happens is that although the moment has passed, you reflect back upon it, and you realize that the subtle moment was a kind of homecoming. You settled with a sense like, I belong here. When you start understanding your life in the light of these moments, you realize this feeling that you're skimming over the surface of the depths of your own life. It's all the more unfortunate because God's unexplainable oneness with us is hidden in those depths over which we're skimming. Then there's the gift of a holy discontent. We say to ourselves, I don't like living this way. I don't like living exiled from this inner richness that from time to time visits me and quickens me from within. I want to abide in the depths so fleetingly glimpsed. That's what we're talking about here and I think that's what we do, what we want to do here at the chapel is learn how to abide in the depths so fleetingly glimpsed.
And I love the idea of the holy discontent. And I think how we deal with our holy discontent is how we deal with our lives. You know, that it is the big question. How do we respond to our holy discontent? And I think probably I will talk about that next week. What you've given us is a whole subject to go into is, you know, given there is that discontent, given we had the plop of the frog, and suddenly there's an opening, and then we come back to our cell phone, and then we're left with the holy discontent. How do we deal with that? And I think we will talk about that next week. So thank you for that fantastic question. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for the conversation. It just is so, you know, always moves it on. Last week it completely moved it on, and this is, again, moved it on. So, you know, we're discovering this together. Go, let's have Amy finally. Before I overrun yet again.
Sorry. I just wanted to say that for me, depth is the thing that keeps me going. It's the wanting to uncover, search, mine, delve, dig, and knowing that there's something deeper, and it's the depth. And I love you bringing this up today because it makes me feel better about my journey. Like, I'm still looking for it. I may always be, but it's liberating to have you talk about it. And I loved what James Finley said as well. So thank you, Nicholas.
That's such a wonderful thing to say, because what you really say is, yes, there is more. And isn't that a hopeful thing? Doesn't that encourage us to, yes, there is more, and therefore it's worth that work. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Okay.